government policy in the United States, but elsewhere as well, in India, for instance, appalling government policy, millions dead. You see, these are the real dilemmas of humanity. The food question, the medicine question, health question, the question of literacy, of housing, the question of being able to have employment of some kind or the other, what the International Labor Organization calls decent work, having decent work, good labor conditions, decent pay to be able to survive, to live healthy lives, more than survival, in fact, to live healthy, fulfilling, prosperous lives, decent work on the table. These are real dilemmas of humanity. Rather than collectively, as a planet, as a fellowship of countries, 193 countries in the United Nations, rather than that, the United States has imposed, provoked wars, sanctions in over 30 countries, including in many countries in Latin America, holding a summit of democracies without Cuba, without Venezuela, without Nicaragua, Cuba, a beacon of progress for the poorer countries of the world. You know, when people from rich countries assess the Cuban Revolution, they forget that this was a revolution in a country that had been exploited for hundreds of years. Poorer countries recognize the great feat of the Cuban people, protecting their sovereignty, not an easy feat, being able to deliver on some of the obstinate facts despite a criminal blockade by the United States, a criminal blockade. These are the countries upon which the United States has imposed a war in the Americas. Apart from the earlier history of coup d'etats, whether it's in Brazil, 1964, in Chile, 1973, in Argentina, 1976, and on all the way out to Honduras in 2009, and of course in Bolivia in 2019, the attempted coup in Venezuela in 2002, the pressure campaign against any country that tries to stand up on its feet. You stand up on your feet, they knock you down. Summit of the Democracies, a comical use of the word democracy, especially given the fact that Mr. Biden recently goes to Saudi Arabia to seek its alliance, the opposite of a democracy. Compare Venezuela and Saudi Arabia, and the comparison is clear. Saudi Arabia comes out wanting, and yet the United States cultivates Saudi Arabia and attempts to use its full power to overthrow the government in Venezuela. Imposing, provoking war in the Americas, using the old 1823 obsolete doctrine, the Monroe Doctrine, 100 years old next year, obsolete, anachronistic, should be junked. But no, rather than junk it, imposing wars, provoking wars in the Americas according to the Monroe Doctrine, and then claiming a kind of global Monroe Doctrine, worse than that, a global Monroe Doctrine, enforcing the writ of the United States with force on the continent of Africa. More and more US and Western military bases, all the way from Ghana down to Zambia, across to Djibouti, the entire Sahel region, for instance, militarized by the French and the United States, imposing and provoking wars on the African continent, imposing and provoking wars on Eurasia, which since the collapse of the Western banking system in 2007, 2008, since that collapse, the start of the Great Depression, Asia began to assert itself. The Chinese economy not only booming, but attempting to reach out to the rest of that landmass through the Belt and Road Initiative, initially One Belt, One Road, moving a transcontinental agenda, competing with the International Monetary Fund, integrating Eurasia. And then, of course, Russia, with its enormous resources, energy of different kinds, natural gas, crude oil, and so on, minerals, metals of different kinds. The historical fact of Eurasian integration, Poland, Italy joining the Belt and Road Initiative, close ties between Germany and Russia and and China. Integration of Eurasia, which was a historical process, is what the United States has tried to prevent, again, by imposing, provoking war, whether it's through the pivot to Asia, the hybrid war that the US imposed on China, an information war, a trade war, an increasingly military escalation along the Pacific Rim, threatening to send medium to long-range missiles into Taiwan to provoke a conflict in the South China Sea. And then, of course, the provoked conflict in Ukraine, move of NATO eastward, but not only that, also the United States using the concept of nuclear primacy to kneecap Russian nuclear posture, to break deterrence, leaving the anti-ballistic missile treaty in 2002, abandoning the intermediate nuclear forces treaty in 2019, trying to develop a policy called nuclear primacy, pressuring Russia, threatening to dismember Russia, break up Russia, so to better control it and use its resources. The United States imposing and provoking wars in Eurasia to prevent the historical fact of Eurasian integration. This is what the United States means when it talks about a summit of democracy. Democracy in its terms. Democracy through the eyes of Washington. In other words, that Washington must lead. No other country must be allowed to stand tall. When Thomas Sankara took power in Upper Volta, he said, we're going to change the colonial name. He picked the name Burkina Faso, the land of upright people. People on the planet want to be upright. They don't want to be subservient to the United States. They don't want to come to a summit of democracy to kiss the ring of the US president.
That's right.
We're not with this summit of democracy. We're with the People's Summit, the summit of the peoples. Burkina Faso, a planet of upright people. That's what we want.
We are the planet of upright people. We refuse to sit down. Stand with me. Let us send a message to Biden and the capitalists and the imperialists who refuse to recognize our dignity. We are the ones who refuse to sit down. Ashe. I'm now honored to welcome a new friend, a culture bearer of her people. Dina Calderon joins us to speak of the struggles of the Tongva people. The stage is yours, my friend.
Aweshkoneha, thank you. Meiha nehinkem, netwanya ne tino orduno calderon, komikrabet naha tongve, koi mixkanakan, koi yoeme. Aweshkoneha kwa avamane te hovet omet. Hello, my relatives. I am Tino Orduno Calderon, Gabrielino Tongva, Ventureño Chumash, and Yoeme, and I'm happy to be here with all of you today. I was confirmed very late in the program, just last night, so I did have to write some notes. Please forgive me for that. But thinking of the topic of sovereignty, what is sovereignty really? So the definitions might tell you supreme power or authority, self-governance, self-determination, autonomy, freedom of external control, independence. All of these ideas are associated with the meaning of sovereignty. Ultimately, the defining authority within an individual consciousness, social construct, or territory. So what does sovereignty look like for the current lifestyles of Indigenous peoples? What does it look like for people who have been removed from their traditional territories? For people who still live in their homelands but are invisible to the settlers who live, rent, and even own lands that we once cared for? For people who cannot freely access their ancient sacred sites for ceremony? For people who have to ask permission to harvest traditional medicines on our own lands? For people who have to follow the laws of their colonizers? If we buy into those well-accepted definitions, we can never truly be sovereign. But if we follow our ancestral teachings, the knowing that we are all unique souls who are here to experience, to learn, to unlearn, to grow spiritually, and equally important, that we are all community, interconnected to all, connected to every energy source, every soul, every relative, that we are not separate beings, we are linked through the web of life. The knowing that we have choices and we are responsible for those choices and for the actions as well as our inactions. Being sovereign to me is the ability to feel gratitude regardless of circumstances. My people never forgot to pray. To be able to trust in Creator and to allow ancestors to guide me, that's sovereignty. To focus on ahiken, which is the breath of life, and choosing to feel alive. To drink and bathe in bar, the sacred waters, and feel renewed again. To greet Thamet, the sun, and to rejoice in the fire element. To feel the energy of Eyoyo Gohor, our Earth Mother, and to return that living energy back to her. It's our responsibility to be good caretakers. Sovereignty is not allowing anyone or anything to break your spirit. My ancestors died for my sovereignty, but they died fighting. They didn't give up easily. They were stripped of their language, they were stripped of their culture, they were stripped of their way of living, their ceremonies, their way of dress, their way of eating. But I am still here because of the resilience. Thank you. I'm still here because of the resilience of my people, and in that I am grateful. So, to be true to yourself, to stand in your power, that is sovereignty. To be the voice and support system for those who are not being heard, or worse yet, for those who have been silenced, that's sovereignty. Be them human or beyond human, I choose to love and support those in need. And that includes the waters, the lands, the minerals, the plants, and the animal relatives. I work for Sacred Places Institute for Indigenous Peoples, where we face these issues head on every day. Land rematriation, land and water protection, Indigenous peoples' rights to access and care for our lands, and recognition and inclusion of First Peoples on their traditional homelands. I will be sovereign in my choices, in my actions, and I will choose where to invest my energy. I encourage people all the time to do the same, to be unique, but supportive and kind, to stand in your power, and remember to love yourself unconditionally. That love that you have for yourself, it would trickle out to your family, to your communities, to the continent, the rest of the world, the universe. That's energy, and it can't be stopped. We have a word in Tongva, pavinokre, and it means that flow of energy. And so that's what I leave with you today. Don't let those colonizers dictate who we are, and don't follow those rules of control and restriction. Let's encourage each other. Let's help one another, and I think our world will be a better place. Awesh koneha. Thank you.
There is a necessary river of unstoppable love that we must share with the rest of the continent.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next comrade who's speaking almost requires no introduction, because his name alone signifies the resistance of a whole island, but I would say the spirit of resistance of the Caribbean peoples for their sovereignty, for their independence, and their national liberation. I want a round of applause that can be heard not in the White House. I want it to be heard in Puerto Rico. Oscar López Rivera. ¡Viva Puerto Rico libre!
¡Viva!
¡Viva Puerto Rico libre!
¡Viva!
¡Que viva Puerto Rico libre!
¡Viva!
We are honored because the comrade who stands next to us withstood the jail cells of the empire
That's right.
for the crime of loving his people. Like Ho Chi Minh said, there will always be the day when the dragon breaks out and flies out of the cell.
That's right.
The importance of having Oscar with us here today is that Oscar's presence with us is the biggest reminder that only the people will free the people.
That's right.
I want to bring you a greeting from Puerto Rico, the beautiful, beautiful island that so many of us love, so many of us are willing to give our lives for Puerto Rico. I have been a very fortunate person in this world because I have survived a lot of things that others have not been able to survive. Puerto Rico is a place that the United States government chose to colonize. And ever since then, the United States government has tried to destroy Puerto Rico. And no one can deny how terrible the United States government is, especially in those areas in the world where he can find and push hatred and fear. But none of us can allow hatred and fear to enter our hearts and our minds. Our hearts and our minds should be full of love for everyone, for everything. Everything that is on this planet should be part of each one of us. We should not separate ourselves from what makes us humans and how important it is for us to maintain ourselves as humans, not follow the example of the evil people who represent the United States government. We cannot tolerate that kind of individual in this world. No matter where we are in this world, we are human beings that love life, love the person next to us, love our family, love everyone who fights and struggles for what is right and for what is needed in this world. I want to share a moment in my life that I never expected to face. I was 21 years old when I got a letter saying that I should report to the center of where we were supposed to give ourselves into the military. And when I received the letter, it said, if you do not report to the induction center on the specified day, you can face up to 5 years in federal prison. And at that particular moment, I had a choice. I chose not to go to prison. And it was difficult. It was not an easy decision. But once I entered the military, I knew that I had my hands full. I knew that my life was in trouble, that my life could be eliminated any moment. And one day, I arrived in Vietnam. I will never forget. I was trained for seven months. The only training that I received from the United States government was to kill. Nothing else. Whether it was in Fort Knox, Kentucky, or whether it was in Fort Hood, Texas. The last thing that shows on my records was 3 weeks of training to fire a nuclear warhead. For 3 weeks, I was trained for that. And it was painful for me. It was terrible for me because I knew what nuclear wars could do. So right after that, I end up in Vietnam. And for some reason, I knew that Vietnam was going to survive. Even then, when I arrived in Vietnam, I don't know why. I had no idea why I felt that Vietnam would not be defeated. And I spent 1 year, 100, no, let me make it correct. I was almost 2 years in Vietnam. And on those 2 years, I faced everything that can be faced. I faced all the pain that a human being can face. Especially, I had not been in Vietnam a month when guys who were with me were killed. And there is something that I had never heard before, and that is what they call a sucking sound. And that's a person who has been shot on his chest and he's dying, and all you can hear is that air and that air. And I remember how painful it was for me just to see that human being next, very close to me, suffering like that. And I was thinking, why are we sent here just to be killed and to kill probably? And for almost 2 years, I chose to try to arrive in the United States, be with my family. I chose to say that I wanted to see if I could be released. It was 87 days after I had completed the demanded time that I had to serve. And the reason that I chose that was because if I arrived in the United States with less than 90 days, they had to release me. And I arrived in the United States when I was released. I came home with a promise, and that promise was to find out as much as I could about Vietnam. Because when I was sent to Vietnam, I knew nothing about Vietnam. But when I was in Vietnam, I learned a hell of a lot about Vietnam. I learned a lot, but I did not know what Vietnam really was. I was just thinking and doing things, and once I'm home, I felt that I could definitely feel that sense that the Vietnamese people will not be defeated, that Vietnam was not going to be defeated by the United States government. And the reason that I was able to figure out why the United States government could not defeat Vietnam was because all the literature that I was able to put together about Vietnam, I learned how courageous, how full of love, how strong their minds, how strong their hearts were. Because if we take two persons, Ho Chi Minh and Von Giap, we take those two men alone, and they probably could have defeated the United States government. The two of them were so creative, so full of energy, so full of love, that they definitely made it possible for them to go from the north to the south. And at that time, France thought that they had control over Vietnam. The French were as arrogant as the Americans. And all of a sudden, they started bringing everything that they could south. And they surrounded Dien Bien Phu. And little did they know that in 40 days, they were going to be running away from Vietnam. So one of the elements is courage. One of the elements was the courage that they had, the love that they had. And I think that all of us should never lose our courage, especially when we're confronted with the evil of those who want to control this world. Because they want to control this world, and we have to make it possible for them to defeat themselves, for them never to be able to come close to the people who love freedom and justice. Right. Nothing can stop us as long as our hearts are full of love, full of energy, full of not allowing any bit of hatred to enter our hearts. And we can go forward. We can show them. And I'm hoping that we will be able to show them that we will not be defeated, that they cannot defeat us, that they cannot erase us from this planet. I definitely believe that Puerto Rico will be an independent and sovereign nation. I believe that when the United States chose to invade and occupy Puerto Rico, they thought that they would be able to wipe us out of the earth. Because they came in to Puerto Rico with one mission, and that was to definitely take over Puerto Rico any way they could. If we look at the first thing that the United States government does once it comes into Puerto Rico, once it occupies and invades Puerto Rico, one of the things that they thought was that we were weak, that we were stupid, that we could not do anything. The person who defined who we were said the following: Puerto Ricans are a mongrel race, that we were incapable of self-government, that we were incapable of developing anything worthwhile on earth, that we were incapable of doing anything but be sloppy, be dirty, be nothing but almost dirt. And little by little, as long as they have been in Puerto Rico, little by little, we have shown them that it is impossible for the United States government to eliminate us, to defeat us. They have chosen right now in Puerto Rico, if we go to Puerto Rico, we have a lot of pain in us because the United States government has done something that we did not expect them to do. In 2007, one day I heard a man say, Puerto Rico is for sale. I was in prison at the time. And my heart palpitated when I heard that the voice of that man saying that. And I was dying to come out of prison. And I knew that my time was not that far away. And 10 months later, I arrived in Puerto Rico. And as soon as I was able to move around Puerto Rico, the first thing that I started doing was to look for this man and his cohorts. This man was and still is probably a billionaire. And along with him, there were little by little more and more billionaires coming into Puerto Rico. And more of them were buying land in Puerto Rico. They were buying the houses that they could buy, beautiful houses, but also buying the houses of the poor. Because somehow they were able to get poor people out of their houses, and all of a sudden, those houses were occupied by people. They fixed them. They made them viable. Some of them were turned into Airbnb houses to bring the people that usually go to Puerto Rico to enjoy the beauty of Puerto Rico. And little by little, they thought, and I still say that they think that they can control Puerto Rico, but right now, they have purchased mostly half of the land in Puerto Rico, and that the conditions in Puerto Rico, if they have it their way, the condition of Puerto Rico is that they will definitely occupy Puerto Rico without Puerto Ricans. Because I have heard people in Puerto Rico say, Puerto Rico would be more beautiful if there were no Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico. I have heard that. Now, one of the things that we are sure is that Puerto Rico will be safe. Puerto Rico will definitely be that independent and sovereign nation in the Caribbean, and that Puerto Rico is the promised land for all Puerto Ricans. There are 6 million Puerto Ricans inside the United States because they have been pushed and ended up in the United States. Even now, they've been pushing. Right now, we have evidence of those people who are buying houses in Puerto Rico pushing them out. So now is the moment for us. Now is the moment for Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico to definitely defeat the United States government, and we can do it. We can do it. And I want to say this. Solidarity for us is reciprocal. We have experienced that is called solidarity. And definitely, we have to adhere to the fact that solidarity has to be reciprocal. All of us should be sharing. All of us should never allow ourselves to be all by ourselves. So thank you, and I'm hoping that this place will continue to be this place that will unite all of us and bring us together.
¡Viva Puerto Rico libre! Our comrade Oscar said many things that are important. But I would reemphasize one key element of what he shared. We have to bring together the strong of heart and the strong of mind. We have to fight together. To stand with Puerto Rico is to stand with humanity. ¡Viva Puerto Rico libre!
¡Que viva!
I am very honored to introduce the next comrade speaking. Comrade Nana is a living manifestation of that revolutionary spirit that crossed the transatlantic. We can never forget that with the enslavement and forced migration of our people to this continent also came revolution. Comrade Nana is a courageous leader of the movements of black migrants in this country. She is a living bond of our struggles to defend the sovereignty of the peoples of Latin America and Africa. My sister, thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I don't know why I'm going after Oscar. What are you doing to me here, brother? Thank you so very much. And just really, can you all hear me? Yes. Excellent. So inspired to see all of you, so inspired to be here in this space, so inspired to be on this panel and to be talking about sovereignty in the face of such opposite of respecting the sovereignty of people. I live here in Los Angeles, rooted in Los Angeles, been here 30 years. Have you seen a single sign in these streets about the Summit of the Americas? Raise your hand if you live in LA. Have you seen before these past 3 days a single indication that the Summit of the Americas was going to be here? Because they knew we would tear that mother sucker up. They knew that if they let us know that they were going to be here, that we would be there at the door giving them a welcome they would never forget. And we are so thankful to the conveners of this People's Summit. My brother, so thankful for you, for the work that all the people that have put this together have done. Because this is a living example of what sovereignty is and what sovereignty can be, not just for us as individuals, but for us as a collective people. When I thought of this topic, I thought of a comment that was made by Joseph Robinette Biden, who said that he was calling this Summit of the Americas because he wanted to share his agenda for Latin America. It's giving much arrogant, elitist, capitalist caucasity. But it is him. It is so on brand. I got to use those terms, right? That's capitalist terms. So on brand for him to be talking about Latin America, South America, to be, not even mentioning the Caribbean or Central America, because, you know, what is that? Not even mentioning Mexico, because who? They done got dissed by AMLO, right? But this idea that the United States controls the so-called Western Hemisphere and also the world just because, and that we are supposed to accept it. Do we accept that? No. Do we accept that?
No.
Do we accept that?
No.
Hell no. We do not accept that. And our presence here says that and shows that. We do not accept that. We know that we have the right to determine who we are and the world that we want to have. I think of my sister who, if I met her, I would fall down. I cry when I see her, just on video. The vice presidential candidate in Colombia, Francia Marquez. Like a little girl when I see her. And when I hear her talking about the delicious life that we deserve, it's the same expression in my culture of Ghana, that delicious life, that tasty life that we all deserve, the tasty life that we all want, that the United States has been the biggest thief an attempted thief, because we still got it, of our delicious life. This Summit of the Americas, this failed Summit of the Americas, this failed Summit of Exclusion is a clear demonstration of their general failure to contain us. Countries that showed up and said, you know, the president's not coming, but we'll go get you the water boy. Go. He can show up for you. And some countries not showing up at all, recognizing how completely colonizer mentality the United States has exhibited, culminated, reaching its apex in the way that it has dealt with the summit of the so-called Americas. When I think about sovereignty and we talk about migration, why do people migrate? Who is leaving Ghana and the best jollof in the world, don't at me, to now come and be freezing in Minnesota? Who is doing that? To suffer anti-blackness, to not be able to walk into the store, to leave your country in one position and come here and find yourself in a worse position, to have the police stop you for a traffic incident, jump on your back, and shoot you in the back of the head. Who's coming here for that? It is because the United States, oh, what did I do? Sorry, microphone. You're good. It's because the United States imposes itself and interferes with the sovereignty of our countries all over the globe. We don't even get to see who we are. They say, oh, you have corrupt government, you have bad government, because we have you. There is no place where we find death. There is no place where we find inequity. There is no place where we find poverty where we do not find the United States of America right there, creating havoc in our spaces. And so whether it is coup d'etat, whether it is economic sanctions and blockades, whether it is a refusal to share any type of vaccine and other medicines so that we can survive and live, all of these are their ways of interfering with us. And unfortunately, we are too complicit in this action. And so as we look at migration and the root causes of migration and what caused people to leave, it is so important that we make those connections. And I'm so excited to see people here from all over who are doing the work in their own countries around the sovereignty of the people, because we are going to have to connect to mend those bonds that my brother and I talked about, that we've had, that have kind of frayed between our movements. We're going to have to bind those up and see how we can work together to be able to push back against the attacks on the sovereignty of our peoples wherever they may be found. And I want to give an example, and then I'll go. Well, I won't go, but I'll stop talking. When we look at the migration into the Americas, and particularly those asylum seekers, and I'm going to focus on Black asylum seekers coming into the United States, we find that the United States has so interfered with the sovereignty of countries in South America and Central America and Mexico that they can't even operate the way they used to when it comes to honoring people's human rights. So you have a situation in which you used to be able to just go, walk through, come through the Northern Triangle, as they call it, you know, walk into Mexico. You had a transit center, you got your passport stamped, you moved on. Ecuador, you could fly into Ecuador from Ghana and all over Africa without a visa, right? Then they decided too many Negroes coming up in here. And so they literally went country to country and entered agreements to say, no, you are going to change the entire way that you relate to each other. You used to be able to just go from Guatemala as a Guatemalan, just go into Mexico. Now you're getting harassed, right? Now you're getting handcuffed. Now you're getting detained. This didn't used to be the way. Is this what Guatemala wants? No. Is this what Honduras wants? No. Mexico? No. But this is the position that they find themselves in, collaborating with the pig, basically. Did I say that? Sorry. Collaborating with the pig to harm their own people and others, because otherwise you're dead. I heard Sankara. Someone brought Thomas Sankara into this room. And Thomas Sankara said to the leaders of Africa that if you don't unite and work against this devil, they're going to pick us off one by one, and they did, including him. And this is the fear that they put in people's hearts. We are the fear snatchers. We are the fear crushers. We are the ones that give that courage that Oscar talked about to allow our people to be able to stand firm and to stand strong. And I'm hoping that that's the energy that we're going to take coming out of this summit. That we're going to understand that we are the ones who are going to make this happen, that the people are the ones who are going to free the people, that if it is not us, that it will not occur, and that the time to do so is now. Till freedom.
Till freedom! Till freedom! Till freedom! Till freedom, we are mending the bonds between our people.
That's right.
We are not victims.
No.
But we are united by the crimes of the imperialists.
That's right.
We have a common enemy in defense of the planet and in defense of our people.
Absolutely.
Which is why I'm beyond honored to welcome a dear comrade who's grown up in the movement. From a young age, she walked the same path with her mother. Our dear Berta Cáceres. When we say Berta Cáceres, you say presente. Berta Cáceres.
Presente.
Berta Cáceres.
Presente.
Berta Cáceres.
Presente.
We say not 1 minute of mourning and silence, a lifetime of struggle.
That's right.
We welcome Bertha Zúniga, leader of COPINH, leader of the indigenous movements of Honduras, courageous young voice for the future of our continent. Berta vive, vive.
La lucha sigue. La lucha sigue. Se multiplicó.
Good afternoon to everyone here present, and for me it's very good to be it's a pleasure to be able to share this table with these people that I also admired a lot. And well, I think that a lot of the people present here today and the peoples that are here today, well, we would like to say good stories, but regretfully our stories are very hard and difficult, but well, we're here standing, and I think that all of us are victims of the system of death, but we're also active victims, that we make people uncomfortable, that we're speaking up, and that we're in this struggle, forging better people for everybody, better communities for everybody. So, well, just wanted to comment to say that if there's something that the capitalists are very afraid of, is for petroleum to be over. And for that has unraveled a lot of wars in the whole world. But also, it has unleashed wars against that system itself, are trying to find other energy sources so it can sustain itself, because this system cannot live without energy. And so that's what I also, a lot of indigenous communities, peasant communities, and from the global south, especially people that are coming from the global south that are leaving that so-called energetic transition, where this system is trying to survive. The system is in crisis and it's trying to survive, and that's compulsion of the system's crisis that's reflected on the social crises is reflected also in the crisis of nature, and that nature is experiencing. So it's very important that we speak about energy, the topic of energy, because the companies are actually talking about energy. They're talking about the green energies, and they're speaking, and they are whatever, commodify everything that they can. Us from this global south, we say those are not clean energy, that also energy that is bathed on the blood of our people, and that's why they're not good at green energies. Well, evidently we're living a climatic crisis that gives us that's everybody's worries, especially people in the global south. But for us, it's very important to demystify all that commercial that is around green energy, because with that excuse and justification, they are imposing a lot of dams, hydroelectric dams, in my people, but also in other communities, under the logic that's the same logic that is used for mining, and where people are being displaced of their places. And I think it's very important for us to speak that when we're speaking about nature, we're not talking only about the trees. We're not only talking about the animals. We're talking about of the subjects they have taken care of nature for thousands of people, which is the originary indigenous peoples of those lands, which are the caretakers. And so it's, for me, it's something inherent that if we're talking about taking care of the nature, to talk about the rights of these peoples and the communities, because right now we're talking about taking care of nature, but you don't speak of who is taking care of nature. And even they're privatizing forests, they're taking rights from the communities to use those forests. There's even the oxygen that we have. We were speaking a couple of years when I was still little. We will speak about the water wars, and we'll say like, oh, how's that gonna happen? It's gonna be the wars are about petroleum and about other things. But right now we are seeing the wars for the water, and this climatic crisis is also showing us the crisis of the violation of rights. So I also wanted to talk that for us, the cause that my mom, Berta Cáceres, that topic, we took that topic not just because she was killed, because she was defending a river, for defending the rights of the Lenca people, for being an indigenous woman, a courageous indigenous woman, a woman also that named those that threaten the people. So that's something that this system is not, it doesn't want around, but she is an example. Because her message is still alive, but also to say that is an important topic because this is a representation of the plundering of the earth, but also of those authoritarian powers, which is also the example of what the militarization of our territories could look like. They have taken not the intellectual actors, but we want that these 8 people out of 5 are ex-military. A couple of them, they study here in the United States in intelligence schools. Some of them were in Iraq also, participating in those wars. And so to know that company that killed its finance for banks and companies from the global north, from Holland, from European countries that say that they respect human rights, or financial entities internationally. And so the representation of a lot of the peoples in the global south, the killings of the leaders in their space and all in Latin America. So we are demanding justice. And so to say that my mom, our compa Berta Cáceres, had very clear the fact that she was a very great speaker. She walked through a lot of peoples, and she had very clear that we couldn't fight only for our problem that we have in this moment. I'm not just fighting for my people, but that we have to understand that this is a system that has multiple faces, a system that's racist, that's capitalist, that's patriarchal, and that's why we have to fight in a unified way and to combat in an integral way that system. Well, we also have something else that we wanted to say. Until what the capitalists are very afraid, and that is the immigrants. And because of that situation, and because the high migratory wave that has happened in the last years, especially the coup d'etat that we we suffered in 2009, where they revoked our rights and meant the death of a lot of our compas. Honduras has had a lot of migration waves of people leaving the country, and then Biden have been promoting a plan to try to stop those migration waves, which is called the Biden Plan for the peoples in Central America. The first is the North Triangle, which is Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. And to continue to finance the corrupt banks that have been participated in the crimes against Berta Cáceres, to finance the companies that plunder the indigenous people's lands, is to give more money for the same thing. And for us, taking a little bit the chant from the feminist revolution, we also say the revolution is going to be migrant or it's not going to be. And we know that there's a very strong connection. There's a very strong pressure from the struggle that the migrant community is waging, because if Biden or if also a lot of people here in the United States were indifferent that for the stuff that were happening in Honduras and what is happening with their imperial politics and other peoples. Now people are worried here in the United States of what's happening outside, and this is not a response to see that in this new context here in Honduras, where our project is to dismantle that dictatorial project that is happening in our country. Because it's not dismantled from the night or day, it happens through the struggle of all the peoples. And so we have learned that those struggles and those fights will continue, and that the indigenous peoples that have struggled and fight for our autonomy, we are going to have to continue a lot of effort to mitigate everything, the anti-sovereignty projects, the militarized projects, and that are part of this imperialist system. So it's something that we cannot, to come here to say good stories, we are going to speaking about our resistance, our stories of resistance that have showed us, all the peoples have showed us that even over 500 years of colonization, they're still present and they're still fighting. Yeah.
We must fight against this system of death.
En contra de ese sistema de
Which means we must fight for life.
Significa que tenemos que luchar por la vida.
One struggle is not enough.
Una lucha no es suficiente.
Two struggles is not enough.
Luchas no son suficientes.
100 struggles is not enough.
No son suficientes.
We need to unite all the struggles of the people.
Todas las luchas del pueblo.
We need to bring all of them together.
Berta se hizo millones, Berta soy yo.
I now, as we almost conclude our plenary, I have a tremendous honor to present someone who has been on the front lines of challenging the terrorism of the United States government. Someone who has put their life on the line countless times. Even when some of us said, Medea, that is too crazy, you can't do that. Even when we've said, comrade, we're worried for your life. Medea is like the fire department of the movement. When she sees the fires of imperialism blazing across the planet, she runs in that direction to stand with our peoples. I was truly lucky to be with Medea as we took life-saving milk, medicine, and other necessary supplies to break the U.S. blockade on Cuba. Thank you, Medea, for what you do.
So first I want to say, and I think it's a collective feeling here, the incredible rage that we feel towards the Biden administration and President Biden himself for what he has done with this summit by thinking that he could decide who to invite and who to disinvite. And so I want to call anybody here who is from Cuba, Venezuela, or Nicaragua to come forward, please, so that we can tell you here. Yay! Beautiful. And while you're coming up, those of you who are from Colombia, do you think your country is a democratic country? Those of you who are from El Salvador, do you think your country is a democratic country? Those of you who are from Brazil, do you think your country is a democratic country? So here are 3 countries represented that we think should be here at the summit because we need to learn from those countries what we all can do better to make the lives of our people better. So let's say, when I say the country, you say presente. Cuba, presente. Venezuela, presente. Nicaragua, presente. Thank you. I also want to ask, thank you, who is the most important person related to this summit of the Americas? Do you think it is Joe Biden? I don't know if you listened to him, but he gave one of the most boring speeches that was full of platitudes that must have put the few people in the room to sleep. What about Kamala Harris? She was supposed to do something about the root causes of migration. And as we've heard from the people on the panel, in your words, I would say, she didn't do shit. She even promised that there would be money coming, but instead of $1 billion that was promised to the 3 countries of the Northern Triangle, there was $40 billion that went to Ukraine to keep a war going there. So it wasn't Biden, it wasn't Kamala Harris, it was actually somebody who wasn't there. Can you guess who that was? No, it was Manuel López Obrador. It was AMLO. It was the president of Mexico. I haven't seen a story about the summit that hasn't talked about the president of Mexico not coming, and then cascade of the boycott so that other countries didn't come. And that's been the story of this failed summit of the Americas. So, for posterity, when I say a line, I want you to repeat it. And these are the lines from Andrés Manuel López Obrador. There cannot be a summit of the Americas if all the countries of the American continent do not participate. So let's say, gracias, AMLO. Gracias, AMLO. Viva Mexico! So talk about sovereignty. This is just a beautiful example for standing up for sovereignty, for demanding respect from the United States, for demanding dignity. And that is what we take away from this Summit of the Americas, is the standing up. Now, I also saw that a beautiful troubadour, who I hope all of you know, Silvio Rodriguez from Cuba, did a concert in Mexico City just a couple of days ago. And at that concert, he was going to sing one of his beautiful songs called El Necio, which means the stubborn one, right? And he said, "This is a song I have dedicated to Fidel Castro. And now I am going to dedicate it to the President of Mexico." And it's a beautiful song. And one of the lines in the song says, "The stubbornness of living without a price tag. La necesidad de vivir sin tener precio." That is what López Obrador represents right now, the stubbornness. That is what the people of the continent represent. That is what the people in this room represent. That is what the People Summit represents. The stubbornness that we will not be dictated to by the imperial powers. The stubbornness of the people of Latin America, who after the first tide of progressive government, some call the pink tide, I know Manolo doesn't like the term the pink tide, but after that, when they were attacked by the right wing in their countries, attacked by the US, and some countries lost control of those progressive governments, they are coming back now even stronger because of the stubbornness of the people in those countries who said, "We will not allow you to turn our countries into these right-wing neoconservative countries." That is the stubbornness that we appreciate. And one other thing that AMLO said that I think is our marching orders as we go forward is that not only did we refuse to acknowledge this Summit of the Americas, but we are calling for the abolition of the Organization of American States. That is the work that we have to do. I was going to call out some people who've done some amazing stubbornness, like our comrade Walter here, who confronted Almagro. I wanted to call out the stubbornness of David Paul right here, the Venezuelan embassy protectors who stayed in the embassy in Washington, D.C. of Venezuela for over a month till the police came in to drag you out. Just stand up for a second. It's this kind of stubbornness that we have to use moving forward. And why I want to end with a quote that was so important to me from Hugo Chavez when some of us were at one of the World Social Forums, and he looked around the room, huge auditorium, and he saw the American delegation, the US delegation, and he said, "The United States is a country of heroes, of dreamers, fighters. The US people with whom we share dreams and ideals must free themselves. And remember, all empires end. One day the decay inside US imperialism, together with the fight from outside, will end up toppling the empire. Those who are victims from outside will be set free, and so will the ones on the inside. The great people of Martin Luther King and Cesar Chavez." This is the message from our comrade. This is the message to go forward. One people, one unity. End the empire, abolish the OAS, onwards towards liberation for all of us. Thank you.
End the empire. Abolish the OAS. End the empire. Abolish the OAS. Berta que camina, la espada de Bolívar por
América Latina, alerta, alerta, alerta que camina. La espada de
Bolívar por América Latina. Comrades, we have been reminded by Comrade Medea, we have to be stubborn.
That's right.
We have to refuse the dictates of the empire.
That's right.
We will see the end of the empire before the empire sees the end of us.
That's right.
Tomorrow, the empire says that we cannot march. They say they don't want to hear the voices of the people. The empire says that there is no unity among the peoples of this continent.
Huh.
We refuse their dictates.
That's right.
We have our permit.
That's right.
We have both the piece of paper the LAPD hands around, which we care very little about, but we have the higher permit
That's right.
of the sovereignty of the people.
That's right.
Tomorrow we march on Biden.
All right.
Tomorrow we march on the empire. We will not let them go easy.
That's right. That's right.
As I've learned from COPINH over the years, we're here to crash their party. Which doesn't mean that we can't party tonight. I don't know if you've heard about the amazing concert we're going to have right outside. There's going to be music. We have amazing rappers who have joined us from across the country, amazing DJs. But remember, we party tonight so we can march tomorrow at 5 p.m., leaving right from here. Before ending, though, we invited delegations from across Latin America. But there was a special delegation that arrived just last night. It's special because despite the misinformation, despite the contradictions, despite the war of lies, this delegation comes here as our friend. I want to recognize and ask her to stand up a dear comrade, Ting Quan, who comes from the People's Republic of China. There's a lesson I learned from my ancestors. Never let your enemies tell you who your friends should be and shouldn't be. Let's go party.